Hello and welcome to my boss guide for the bosses within the level 65 story dungeon, Bardam's Mettle. This instance takes place within the large expanse of the Azim Steppe and includes 3 bosses in total. The first of which is Galera, a large buffalo type creature. This fight has a few mechanics to be aware of. Firstly, you may notice around the room there are groups of monsters that are unattackable, be it sheep, rams or coerls. Galera uses an ability called Rush and targets a player with a long line AoE. This attack does damage based on how close to the boss you are. Full damage will be awarded to those in melee range and low to none to those who run away far enough. Additionally to this, the monster group you run near will be aggroed and have different abilities to avoid. Coerls will do a nasty AoE cone and apply a paralyze effect which you want to avoid, and sheep and ram do line attacks to avoid that also apply a stun. Aside from this main ability, Galera won't pose much of a threat. Its other abilities include Heave, which is a front conal AoE for the tank to avoid, and Crumbling Crust that causes small circle AoEs to appear to avoid on the floor. Rinse and Repeat, choosing to aggro sheep or rams, is preferable to coerls as they have much easier to avoid AoEs. Once this chunk of barbecue meat is dead, we can head off deeper and to boss 2. This boss is the Hunter of Bardem, a giant golem that turns off your ability to tank, heal, DPS or use any action in the game other than your basic movement abilities throughout the entire fight. Tactically then, this is a puzzle boss where you have to avoid as many AoEs and attacks as possible on this platform. Failure to avoid 3 mechanics in a row will block a player out for that trial phase, of which there are 3 phases. So let's look at those mechanics. We have an AoE to step out of and then back inwards to avoid another ring. We have a checkered floor with squares of safety to stand in. And that's phase 1. Phase 2 is more of the same abilities, again with the addition of circle pillars to stand in to avoid meteors hitting the ground. Then a circle AoE ball which you must move to avoid hitting other party members with the safe zone in the center of each circle. Then a red AoE will be dropped on the marked players, so put these on the edges of a room and then run back inwards to avoid their blasts. Thirdly, you will need to run away from a moving circle beneath your feet. In this occasion I failed as I didn't move soon enough, so I got the 3 stacks very quickly and got put out of the fight for this phase. Next is a conal AoE to avoid by standing behind the golem in the center. And then he puts 4 more AoE circles up to avoid. These 4 AoE circles are pretty easy to avoid. I'll eventually get released from my fetters state where I can actually play the game again as this phase changes. So as long as the majority wins, you will get through each of the phases. So on this last phase, this is phase 3, you'll have 4 of these star shards around the room. 3 of them will be turned into adds. Each add will obviously be unattackable, but they'll provide themselves with more AoEs to avoid on those particular segments. One of the segments, however, will not turn into an add, and that will be reserved for, as you can see in the center of the room, is a looming shadow. That basically says there will be a meteor fall pretty soon, and you need to use that last star shard to avoid that meteor's destruction of you, basically. As you can see, it's coming down now. I had to avoid a few conal AoEs there, as you might have seen from the earlier phases, but once you've survived this meteor, you pretty much finish off this phase. And there you go, you get the old epic do-do-do-do-do-do-do, and now we can move on to the last boss. And this is the last boss here. This is Yeol. This is a giant bird that loves AoEs. Periodically, balls around the edges of a room project line AoEs, basically laser beams to avoid, into the room at different angles. At the same time, he marks players with red markers which they must spread out with before they fade, which do a damage ability called Flutterfall, where they do damage based on how many people they hit, so spread for these. Wind Unbound is a normal unavoidable wind AoE that he periodically puts out to be basically healed through with AoE heals, and usually he does this before casting Eye of the Fierce. Eye of the Fierce is an eye ability, so you need to face away, otherwise you will be mind controlled like my character here, and you won't be able to control it for 10 seconds. At around 45%, Yeol takes to the skies and is unattackable. An ad is then brought in. This ad must be killed before the phase ends. There are 2 ads in total before the phase ends, and during the ad's uptime, Yeol charges across the platform, doing damage to those in his way. After these 2 ads are dead, the bird comes back down for this last phase. This part of the fight is particularly messy, with many AoEs to avoid. The line AoE lasers are still here, along with the movement circles that you need to either keep moving to avoid them hitting you under your feet, like a clock around the sides of the room, or stand in the center. There are 2 new attackable points on the boss, the left and right wing. Both of these need to be destroyed to end this phase for the boss to be attackable again. Then you simply finish him off, as he will be below 10% probably at this point, primed for either a limit break or some finishing moves. Hopefully this has been helpful. I try to show you and talk about only what you need to understand at a bare minimum to complete the dungeon bosses in a bite-sized fashion. If you like this format and want more, subscribe below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.